Well, before I get too far along, I'm going to document what I'm doing with this car. This is my 1967 RS SS Camaro. I bought it in 1977 and drove it until 1983 off and on. I bought it with no engine, transmission, radiator, exhaust system. It had been a stolen recovery, and I bought it from the owner who had taken the money and spent the money on other things and had the car sitting in his garage for quite a while. Didn't have any wheels or tires for it when I got it either. But at the time, back in the 70s, these were not important classic cars. Still really aren't important classic cars, but they are important muscle cars. And at the time, I wasn't too worried about finding a 67 block or a 67 transmission or anything else. So it's got a later model LT1350 in it. The rally rims are off of a Corvette. They were wider than the original Camaro rally rims. I still have in the trunk here, I have the original caps that I got and the rally rims. I also have all of the original beauty rims, center caps. Like I say, I wasn't too worried when I first got the car about it being exactly stock. The gauge pack had been stolen, so if you can see it, I built another gauge pack down there and put all Stuart Warner gauges in it. Got the 67 Camaro seats and 67 Camaro console. The car also has the fold-down rear seat option, and it was a 4-speed car from the factory. It's a from the factory RS SS. Came with both. Originally came with a 350. And that's what's in there now. The hood was missing, and at the time, instead of buying a stock hood, I bought this Ram Air hood. It's on here right now. Car, of course, being an RSSS, came with the fold-away headlights, came with the the backup lights in the valance underneath, came with the wide all red camera down here. Came with the wide all red tail lights. The motor in this car was actually being built by me and a friend to go in a bracket racer, and since it wasn't going to be a street motor, it was running about 14-to-1 compression. Had a super wild cam in it. Didn't have this induction system on it. Was going to go in a Chevy 2, which unfortunately, the Chevy 2 was mine, and it got stolen, along with the scatter shield and the shifter and a bunch of other stuff. But luckily the motor and transmission were not in the car at the time, so I bought the Camaro and put it in there. The block, basically, trying to get it streetable, I changed the camshaft out to a hydraulic zero-lash TRW. I put the big, thick, solid copper gaskets, head gaskets on so I could lower the compression a little bit. The heads have been ported and polished, and they were CC'd. I actually took them and ground a little bit out of each head, each cylinder, and brought the CCs up about another 2 to 3 CCs per cylinder, trying to lower the compression ratio down far enough. I also got rid of the distributor we had. I went with a mechanical advanced distributor, recurved the ignition to having to have a very, very late advance, lighter weights. And I also put the dash pot, the vacuum on there. That's a truck one that it retards sooner than a car one does. So we were trying to keep the car from getting any ignition advance. Also give it a little bit less lead for static than normal. That worked to a little bit. Then I also added water injection. That's this tank you see over here and the control unit over there. even with the water injection, all the things I did, the motor was still not really streetable. Ran great, but you really couldn't give it any throttle below about 3,000 RPM with any load, or it would just detonate like crazy. Ended up getting a wrist pin knock, which is kind of the reason I parked it. I was going to get another short block with a much less compression, and after that, the car just never came out of storage. I got too busy with life. I've built other cars. I built a 46-foot boat, restored a power boat, did a bunch of other things in the middle, and had several other cars and gone through them all the time. This just sat. Rode the back of a warehouse for years, and then I rode a mini storage for years. And it's now back home in my garage and going to go through a pretty much complete restoration of, not really a restoration, it's going to be a resto mod. I've already purchased, let me get in here, I've already purchased an LT3 engine and a 6-speed manual transmission. I think the mileage in here is 67,000 and something. I can't quite read it, but it's 67,780 miles on the car. Mainly because it was parked for a couple of years before I bought it. So it ran from its birth at 67 till probably about 74, 75. I bought it stored after somebody had it in the storage for a couple of years. And basically only drove it a little bit, worked on it for a long time, and then got it where I wanted it, and then had too many problems with the motor being too high compression. And let me see something here. The clutch in this thing is a breaker. I have a zoom disc and pressure plate in this with a Corvette large flywheel, and yeah, the gearbox still feels pretty good. Shifts through all the gears okay. And not much else. I mean, the car is basically what it is. It's a 1967 Camaro that has basically been stored for just about the majority of its life. I'm going to have to kind of guess and see. Wow, all the controls still move. The car has been stored pretty much in a non-air conditioned, non-climate controlled environment of warehouses and mini storages. Outside bumpers got a lot of rust because I stupidly had covered the thing with blue tarps originally, and it sweated in the mini storage, and so I did get a little bit of rust on the bumpers. There's a little tiny spot of rust right at the back where the back final top came down, right at the corner. I'm sure the blue tarp did that also because it wasn't there before I stored it. It was only under the blue tarp for a couple of years in the warehouse before I discovered that, or the mini storage, before I discovered it was what was happening and pulled the tarp off it. I had to actually wipe the front and rear windows. They were so thick you could not see anything out of them. Just to move the car out of storage, I had to do that. Anyway, this is just pretty much getting an idea of where I'm starting from. Not going to try and save anything out of the drivetrain at all. I'm going with the LS3 and the new modern 6-speed. I'm also going with a complete front suspension and rear suspension from total cost involved. I bought their front and rear combination clip, their torque arm, with a completely built narrowed 9-inch Ford rear end, 6-piston Willwoods going in the front, 4-piston Willwoods going in the back. I really wanted to save the rally rims, but I didn't want to stick with this very, very small rotor, so unfortunately I'll have to go with a bigger rim to fit the larger rotors I bought. But I will get rid of the rally rims and buy something somewhat classic to that area, or that, should say that era, not area. And I am also, as a gift to my wife pretty much, I'm going to also buy an aftermarket underdash reproduction air for the car. She's not really big into riding in cars in the heat, and Well, it doesn't matter much to me. I like to roll the windows down and feel the wind. She's more the other way around. So in order to make the car fun for both of us, I will add air. And my intentions are to keep this car pretty much exactly the way it was as far as stock goes for outside. By buying the aftermarket suspension, I can put fat tires in without having to put wheels, doing flares on the wheel wells. I'm going to go back with the original gold, or a gold very similar to that. I'm going to go back with the original black vinyl top that was on the car. I'm going to keep the ram air hood, and I'm not going back bone stock. It won't matter to me. The only piece of metal on the car I have to replace is the front header right here. It's kind of rusty, and also it's got a little dent right here. As far as dents on the car go, there are two very minor items here. One, somebody before me did that, but the car, at least they didn't try and fix it, so there's no Bondo or no terrible things happening to it. The rest of the car is pretty much dead straight, except for little tiny minor imperfections. And there is one gash in the back right here where obviously somebody backed into probably a parking bumper or whatever. Fortunately, they didn't try and fix that either, so I'll be able to take that out, do metal work on it, keep it all original. Trying to keep the car looking exactly like a 1967 RS SS Camaro, and I am going to add a chin spoiler and probably the little spoiler on the trunk. I'll see how I feel when I get to it. Most of the badging is intact. I see the Chevrolet part of this has come off, and I think there's one other badge that's missing, a 350 emblem or something, but I'll probably be replacing all that with new, unless I can make it look good. And that's about it. For such a small amount of mileage, these are the original tires I put on this car after I got it. And if you can see, there are these tires are almost like brand new. That includes, of course, a few burnouts and quite a bit of back road racing. I actually changed the mono-leaf springs to multi-leaf springs. I changed the front springs to a stiffer spring. I took the power steering box out and went with a quicker ratio manual steering box. Drag link, a few other pieces I needed to make it work. All that was from the How to Make Your Camaro Handle book of the time. I did upgrade the pads on the disc brakes in the front. This car does have the large Corvette front disc brakes. The back, I'm trying to think if I changed the drums, and I was looking for the set of finned heavy-duty drums. I don't even remember if I ever found those or not, but I did put a better set of drum brakes pads in the back. Never had a problem with brake fade on the car, even no matter how much I pushed it on back roads. So that, for stock, was pretty decent at the time, and that's where we're at right now. I guess this is going to be the entire beginning of where this car starts. And like I say, good thing it's a California car. There's no rust anywhere that matters. All this is solid underneath. Floor pans inside the car are good. There's a little bit of rust in the trunk, but not through rust, it's surface. And that's because of the fact that, like I say, I mistakenly put a couple of blue tarps over this, and then the mini storage would get water blown in underneath the door, and it would get hot and wet in there, and I ended up with some rust. But I was checking it out the other day, and it is pretty much all just surface. Looks like some of the rust has actually come off the parts that were back in here. I had some old parts from the steering and the upgrade of the front suspension laying around back in here, and that's really about it. Got the original mirrors from the car in there. I have a high torque starter in there that came in this box because the compression was a little much for the stock Chevrolet starter. It really wouldn't turn it over. Anyway, that is pretty much where we're at the moment, and I will be working more on this video when I actually start doing some work on the car.